Chapter 14 of The Cruise of the Snark. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Roger Moline. The Cruise of the Snark by Jack London. Chapter 14. The Amateur Navigator. There are captains, and some mighty fine captains, I know. But the run of the captains of the Snark has been remarkably otherwise. My experience with them has been that it is harder to take care of one captain on a small boat than of two small babies. Of course, this is no more than is to be expected. The good men have positions, and are not likely to forsake their 1,000 to 15,000 ton billets for the Snark, with her 10 tons net. The Snark has had to cull her navigators from the beach, and the navigator on the beach is usually a congenital inefficient, the sort of man who beats about for a fortnight trying vainly to find an ocean isle, and who returns with his schooner to report the island sunk with all on board, the sort of man whose temper or thirst for strong waters works him out of billets faster than he can work into them. The Snark has had 3 captains, and by the grace of God she shall have no more. The first captain was so senile as to be unable to give a measurement for a boom jaw to a carpenter. So utterly agedly helpless was he, that he was unable to order a sailor to throw a few buckets of salt water on the Snark's deck. For 12 days at anchor under an overhead tropic sun the deck lay dry. It was a new deck. It cost me $135 to recalk it. The second captain was angry. He was born angry. "Papa is always angry," was the description given him by his half-breed son. The third captain was so crooked that he couldn't hide behind a corkscrew. The truth was not in him. Common honesty was not in him. And he was as far away from fair play and square dealing as he was from his proper course when he nearly wrecked the Snark on the Ringgold Isles. It was at Suva, in the Fijis, that I discharged my third and last captain, and took up again the rôle of amateur navigator. I had essayed it once before, under my first captain, who, out of San Francisco, jumped the Snark so amazingly over the chart that I really had to find out what was doing. It was fairly easy to find out, for we had a run of 2,100 miles before us. I knew nothing of navigation, but after several hours of reading up and half an hour's practice with the sextant, I was able to find the Snark's latitude by meridian observation, and her longitude by the simple method known as equal altitudes. This is not a correct method. It is not even a safe method, but my captain was attempting to navigate by it, and he was the only one on board who should have been able to tell me that it was a method to be eschewed. I brought the Snark to Hawaii, but the conditions favored me. The sun was in northern declination and nearly overhead. The legitimate chronometer sight method of ascertaining the longitude I had not heard of. Yes, I had heard of it. My first captain mentioned it vaguely, but after 1 or 2 attempts at practice of it he mentioned it no more. I had time in the Fijis to compare my chronometer with 2 other chronometers. 2 weeks previous, at Pago Pago in Samoa, I had asked my captain to compare our chronometer with the chronometers of the American cruiser the Annapolis. This he told me he had done. Of course he had done nothing of the sort, and he told me that the difference he had ascertained was only a small fraction of a second. He told it to me with finely simulated joy and with words of praise for my splendid timekeeper. I repeat it now with words of praise for his splendid and unblushing unveracity. For behold, 14 days later, in Suva, I compared the chronometer with the one on the Atua, an Australian steamer, and found that mine was 31 seconds fast. Now, 31 seconds of time, converted into arc, equals 7 1/4 miles. That is to say, if I were sailing west, in the night time, and my position, according to my dead reckoning from my afternoon chronometer sight, was shown to be 7 miles off the land, why, at that very moment I would be crashing on the reef. Next I compared my chronometer with Captain Woolley's. Captain Woolley, the harbor master, gives the time to Suva, firing a gun signal at 12 noon, 3 times a week. According to his chronometer, mine was 59 seconds fast, which is to say that, sailing west, I should be crashing on the reef when I thought I was 15 miles off from it. I compromised by subtracting 31 seconds from the total of my chronometer's losing error, and sailed away for Tanna, in the New Hebrides, resolved, when nosing around the land on dark nights, to bear in mind the other 7 miles I might be out, according to Captain Woolley's instrument. Tanna lay some 600 miles west-southwest from the Fijis, and it was my belief that while covering that distance I could quite easily knock into my head sufficient navigation to get me there. Well, I got there, but listen first to my troubles. Navigation is easy, I shall always contend that. But when a man is taking 3 gasoline engines and a wife around the world, and is writing hard every day to keep the engines supplied with gasoline and the wife with pearls and volcanoes, he hasn't much time left in which to study navigation. Also, it is bound to be easier to study said science ashore, where latitude and longitude are unchanging, in a house whose position never alters, than it is to study navigation on a boat that is rushing along day and night toward land that one is trying to find, and which he is liable to find disastrously at a moment when he least expects it. To begin with, there are the compasses and the setting of the courses. We sailed from Suva on Saturday afternoon, June 6, 1908, and it took us till after dark to run the narrow reef-ridden passage between the islands of Viti Levu and Mbenga. The open ocean lay before me. There was nothing in the way, with the exception of Vatu Leili, a miserable little island that persisted in poking up through the sea, some 20 miles to the west-southwest, just where I wanted to go. Of course, it seemed quite simple to avoid it by steering a course that would pass it 8 or 10 miles to the north. It was a black night, and we were running before the wind. The man at the wheel must be told what direction to steer in order to miss Vatu Leili. But what direction? I turned me to the navigation books. True course, I lighted upon. The very thing. What I wanted was the true course. I read eagerly on. The true course is the angle made with the meridian by a straight line on the chart drawn to connect the ship's position with the place bound to. Just what I wanted. The Snark's position was at the western entrance of the passage between Viti Levu and Mbenga. The immediate place she was bound to was a place on the chart 10 miles north of Vatu Leili. I pricked that place off on the chart with my dividers, and with my parallel rulers found that west by south was the true course. I had but to give it to the man at the wheel, and the Snark would win her way to the safety of the open sea. But alas and alack, and lucky for me, I read on. I discovered that the compass, that trusty, everlasting friend of the mariner, was not given to pointing north. It varied. Sometimes it pointed east of north, sometimes west of north, and on occasion it even turned tail on north and pointed south. The variation at the particular spot on the globe occupied by the Snark was 9 degrees 40 minutes easterly. Well, that had to be taken into account before I gave the steering course to the man at the wheel. I read, "The correct magnetic course is derived from the true course by applying to it the variation. Therefore, I reasoned, if the compass points 9 degrees 40 minutes eastward of north, and I wanted to sail due north, I should have to steer 9 degrees 40 minutes westward of the north indicated by the compass, and which was not north at all. So I added 9 degrees 40 minutes to the left of my west by south course, thus getting my correct magnetic course, and was ready once more to run to open sea. Again, alas and alack!